Yep, we have another animated film out. It's not often that I get to see two animated films come out the same day. Usually, if that happens, I get to see one early and talk about the other one later, but in this case, we did get two, and I've already talked about one of them, which was Orion in the Dark, so let's get to the other. Anyway, the latest animated film to come out is called The Tiger's Apprentice, the latest animated film to come out from Paramount. And I'll be honest, this was a film that I really wasn't all that excited for. For one, it didn't look very good. The trailers looked not impressive. And the other reason, it was from Paramount Animation. I don't think I need to go into a lot of discussion about the state of Paramount animation-wise, because as I'm sure you all know, it's quite a mess. If you don't know, I did a breakdown on what's happening in my review of Under the Boardwalk, so feel free to check that out if you're curious. But the short version on what's been happening is that the studio has been in trouble for some time due to a lot of management shakeups, projects getting scrapped, and a string of unimpressive films, with the only animated film coming out from them since 2016 that I've liked being Mutant Mayhem. Everything else they've put out has been okay at best to awful at worst. And recently, a lot of the films they've been putting out haven't been able to get a theatrical release, as Paramount has been instead dumping them onto Paramount Plus or digitally, which was also the case for The Tiger's Apprentice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I guess I should briefly talk about the making of this film. Now, this film is based on a book written by Lawrence Yep that's the start of a YA trilogy, and it's a book that Hollywood was circling for a while. In fact, the development of this film got its start all the way back in 2008 when it was supposed to be a made-for-TV movie by Cartoon Network, with Finding Neverland screenwriter David McGee writing the script. It seemed promising enough, until I tell you that this was supposed to be a live-action CG film at the time when Cartoon Network was trying to get into live-action. And their live-action stuff was really bad. And if you need proof of this, just check out this clip from their other live-action made-for-TV movie, Reanimated. Yeah. The film ended up not getting made, as not long after they bought the rights, CN realized their live-action stuff wasn't working and quickly abandoned it, diving headfirst into making cartoons again. This would end up working out quite well for them. So for a while, the film's rights stayed on the shelf for a decade, when in 2019, the film's rights were acquired by Paramount to be made as an animated film, with former Pixar animator Carlos Bonet directing it for a release in February 2022, though it was delayed to 2023 because of COVID. But then things got bumpy by 2022. After Paramount's management changeover with Brian Robbins taking over, it was revealed that the film had a change of director, with former DreamWorks animator Ramen Hui directing instead, and the film would be pushed back to December 2023. But then the film was delayed to January 2024, and then in 2023, Paramount gave up on a theatrical release entirely and moved it to Paramount Plus, with the Mean Girls musical, which was initially a Paramount Plus original, taking its place instead. This makes this the third Paramount animated film that was initially supposed to go into theaters, but was instead dumped out onto streaming. You know, even putting my feelings on these films aside, it really makes me angry seeing studios throw out their films and just dump them on streaming when they have no faith in them. And it makes things worse with Paramount, as I didn't mention this in my Under the Boardwalk review, but around the time Mutant Mayhem was coming out, Brian Robbins did an interview with Variety where he talked about the animation division, and he revealed they would be leaning more towards IPs rather than original films, stating, quote, "We're not going to release an expensive original animated movie and just pray people will come." I really don't think I need to describe how stupid and moronic this was, especially considering he pointed to Elemental's opening box office weekend as proof of this, not realizing Elemental was already becoming a sleeper hit by that point. And also, Brian, people didn't line up to see these movies not because they were original movies, it was because these movies were not good. Did you seriously think people were going to get in line and save a seat for a movie like Rumble, or Wonder Park, or Paws of Fury? Ugh. Robbins was obviously blasted for this comment, both by people in the animation industry as well as yours truly, and Paramount Animation president Ramsey Naito had to make a new statement backing up original films to rebuff this idiotic claim, but the damage was done. If anything, it just showed that Paramount's animation plan from 2011 had really gone south. So with that said, with all the delays it went through and the director's change and the ridiculousness that's happening at Paramount Animation, how did The Tiger's Apprentice turn out? Ooh. This was a rough one, guys. The Tiger's Apprentice is bad. Really bad. I've seen some bad animated action films over the years, and I can say that this is certainly another one that really doesn't have a lot going for it. And it's saying a lot because what I've heard about the book is great and promising. But what we got instead is a really badly made movie that amounts to being another dud in Paramount's animated catalog. In San Francisco, a teenager named Tom, played by Brandon Suhu, is having a hard time fitting in high school, getting bullied, when he accidentally discovers a power that shoves a bully into the ceiling. When he goes home to his grandmother, Mrs. Lee, played by Ken Hua Tan, she starts to explain something she had never told him about before when a man named Mr. Hu, played by Henry Golding, unexpectedly shows up to warn her that a threat named Lu is coming. Sure enough, Lu, played by Michelle Yeoh, shows up, and Mrs. Lee sacrifices herself to protect Tom while also entrusting him with a powerful necklace known as the Phoenix. Hu eventually makes Tom his apprentice and tells him that he is one of the 12 Chinese zodiac, the Tiger. Hoping to train Tom before Lu shows up, Hu enlists the help of some other zodiac, Rat, played by Bowen Yang, and Dragon, played by Sandra Oh, in order to help save the others from Lu's clutches and protect the Phoenix before it falls into the wrong hands. Yep, it's that kind of plot. Basically, the standard plot you would expect from a young adult story like this. A kid who doesn't fit in and wishes to be normal, his family member holds out on a secret, a different character from a certain world shows up, a big villain is on the rise, and the kid has to team up with the others to take down the villain who wants world domination and also protect a certain object from them to unlock their goals. Yep, it's a cliche jackpot, everyone! I had heard a lot of bad things leading up to this film, not just based on the director's change and delays, but also from some former storyboard artists who took to Letterboxd and talked about some horrific stories of the making of the film. But even if I didn't know any of that, I could tell this film clearly had something going wrong because the story really is bad. This is a story that really does not have a lot of surprises up its sleeves. It goes exactly the way you'd think it goes, and it doesn't do anything that's clever or interesting while playing around with this Chinese mythology. And it's weird because the book was ripe with it, and it also explored angles that were really interesting. For example, in the book, Tom was really engrossed in American culture and not really interested in the Chinese culture he was raised in, and he learns throughout the book to appreciate it more, and I think that's a really great lesson for children to learn, and something that would be cool to explore in the film. Too bad it doesn't do that. Not to mention, a lot of the backstories that were in the book were completely missing. The dragon had a really interesting backstory, and the monkey was Sun Wukong the Monkey King. And I think that was really clever. It's cool writing. But again, not here in the film. It's basically the teacher training the student to get better to defeat the villain, except it's not done nearly as well, mainly because the pacing of this film is awful. This whole film is exceptionally rushed. I mean, in less than 20 minutes, Tom accidentally discovers his guardian powers, he has a talk with a girl named Lam, played by Leah Lewis, he and his grandmother start to have the talk about the Guardians, Hu shows up, then Lu shows up, Mrs. Lee sacrifices herself, and Hu takes Tom to his home and makes him his apprentice. And this all happened in less than 20 minutes. That's like 30 minutes of storytelling in less than 20 minutes. Why? This whole film is less than 90 minutes, and man, you can tell that they really didn't get a hang with this story. It also doesn't help that most of the comedy is exceptionally unfunny, and it really resorted down to using some lame cliches. The walk away from an explosion in slow motion cliche. Oh, give me a break. I thought we retired that cliche years ago. I should also mention the needle drops were especially bad. If you thought the needle drops in the Super Mario Bros. Movie were lame, oh, you ain't seen nothing. I mean, I knew I was in trouble when the first scene of the film was a car chase that was set to Flow Rida's Low. You know, the apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur song. Yeah, it's as bad as it sounds. I mean, I can imagine that the song was only picked because they needed a popular song from 2008 for the scene, and they pulled up the Billboard year-end chart on Wikipedia and picked Low because it was the first option they had. I mean, how else could you explain it? If there's one thing that could work for this film, it would probably be the animation, but unfortunately I found it rather lackluster. It's so weird this film came from Mick Rose, who I just talked about with Orion in the Dark, and while that film looks visually great, this looks really mediocre. I mean, the sets are decent, I'll give it that. San Francisco does look pretty good here, and I also thought some of the Guardians animation looked good, mainly Who was the tiger, but the models of some of the characters don't look right, especially the humans. They look like they came out of an animated film from 2007. Everything in the film kind of looked stiff and rubbery, and it doesn't help that the action doesn't look all that great. It's so clunkily staged, and it really isn't all that thrilling, and it really pales in comparison to other animated action films like Spider-Verse, Mutant Mayhem, and Kung Fu Panda. As far as the characters go, almost all of them were not good. Tom is kind of a pathetic protagonist, as he's really whiny and weak, and I didn't believe his growth throughout the film at all. He didn't seem like he was eager to learn about any of this, and I didn't feel any relatability to him. It also doesn't help that Mr. Who isn't very good either. He also complains a lot throughout the film, and he seems very unwilling to help Tom with his training, and is constantly cocky and loud, and such a horrible example of a teacher character. Like, this whole film is resting on the bond between the teacher and student learning together and training, but I never got the sense these two liked or respected each other. The bond was basically non-existent, and that's ultimately the film's fatal flaw. If you're making a story like this where the student learns from the master, there needs to be a bond growing between them, and both have to grow and learn throughout their training. Some good examples are Po and Shifu in Kung Fu Panda, or Miles and Peter in Into the Spider-Verse. Both of these duos start off noticeably flawed and at each other's nerves, but both grow throughout the story, and you come to really love both of them as they really mature. This is non-existent in Tom and Who's training. These two have no chemistry whatsoever. And that leads me into my other major criticism with this film, the acting. This film has an amazing cast. It's filled with a lot of Asian actors, and I love that kind of representation. But their performances here are not good. Everyone in this film seemed to be really phoning it in, and they all gave the impression that they were just simply reading their lines and not acting. Henry Golding especially. He really slips out of his American accent a lot and into his natural British voice.
Let's go, you know the drill, Zodiac! Alright, Zodiac, we got a Guardian to protect.
And it's weird because this is an amazing cast, and I've seen most of these actors in other animated films, and they were great. But here, it just doesn't seem like they were that enthusiastic, and I can't say I blame them. I think the film we got wasn't the film they signed on to. The only actor in the film who I thought was genuinely trying is Michelle Yeoh as Lou. She is really good here, and she is absolutely having fun playing a menacing villain. Bless her heart, she tried, but even she couldn't save this film, legendary as she is. So, to wrap things up, The Tiger's Apprentice is a really bad animated film and extremely wasted potential. While some of the animation isn't bad and Michelle Yeoh is great as the villain, the story is horribly paced and cliched, the animation is awkward and has some unimpressive models, and the characters are unremarkable and have no bonds while also having a lot of phoned-in performances. This was really, really bad, and it's an easy film to skip. It's definitely not worth a Paramount Plus subscription, and I certainly don't recommend it if you're a fan of the book, because if anything, this film is a portrayal of it. All it adds up to is being yet another dud in Paramount's animated catalog alongside the many other animated duds they've released. I think I've said all I can about this one. The Tiger's Apprentice gets a 4. What a massive misfire of a film. I'm not sure what is going on at Paramount because this is the latest animated dud in their catalog, and it's a shame because this could have been a lot, as it was the start of an interesting trilogy of books that could have lent itself to becoming a cool animated trilogy of films. But as far as I'm concerned, this film certainly doesn't have the Eye of the Tiger.